I never thought my daughter's wedding day would become the stage for my greatest humiliation and, surprisingly, my most unexpected vindication. My name is Robert, and I'm a simple mechanic who spent 30 years working with grease under my fingernails to give my daughter Emma everything she deserved. The wedding venue was magnificent. Crystal chandeliers hung from vaulted ceilings, and white roses adorned every surface. Emma looked radiant in her flowing gown, but I couldn't shake the feeling that I didn't belong among the designer suits and expensive jewelry that filled the room. My daughter was marrying into wealth, and I was acutely aware of the divide between my world and theirs. Marcus, my daughter's groom, came from old money. His family owned a chain of luxury hotels, and they carried themselves with the kind of confidence that only generations of wealth can provide. From the moment we met, I sensed his disdain, though he masked it well around Emma. There were subtle glances, barely perceptible sneers when he thought no one was looking, and conversations that died when I approached. The ceremony went smoothly, but it was during the reception that everything unraveled. I had just finished giving my father of the bride speech, pouring my heart out about watching Emma grow from a curious little girl into the brilliant woman she'd become. I spoke about late nights helping her with homework at our kitchen table, about saving every penny for her college education, about being proud of the man she'd chosen to marry. As I stepped down from the microphone, emotions running high, I accidentally bumped into a waiter carrying a tray of champagne glasses. The crash echoed through the ballroom as crystal shattered across the marble floor. Guests turned to stare, and my face burned with embarrassment as I dropped to my knees to help clean up the mess. That's when Marcus approached, his face flushed with what I initially thought was concern. But as he leaned down, his words cut through me like broken glass. "This is exactly why people like you don't belong in places like this," he hissed, his voice low enough that only I could hear. "You're an embarrassment, Robert. A shame to this family. Emma deserves better than having her wedding ruined by her father's clumsiness." I felt my world collapse. The man my daughter loved, the man she'd chosen to spend her life with, saw me as nothing more than an embarrassment. I remained on my knees, frozen, as shame washed over me like a tide. Around us, conversations resumed, but I felt completely exposed, like everyone could see my inadequacy written across my face. Then, from behind Marcus, came a voice that commanded immediate attention. "Is there a problem here?" I looked up to see a distinguished gentleman in an impeccably tailored suit. His silver hair was perfectly styled, and his presence seemed to shift the very air in the room. This was Charles Montgomery, Marcus's uncle and the true patriarch of their family empire. I'd heard whispers about him throughout the evening. He was the kind of man who could buy and sell companies with a phone call, whose influence extended into politics and high society. Marcus straightened immediately, his arrogance melting into nervousness. "Uncle Charles, I was just the accident with the glasses." But Charles wasn't looking at Marcus. His eyes were fixed on me with an expression I couldn't quite read. He extended his hand to help me to my feet, his grip firm and reassuring. "Robert Morrison," he said, and I was surprised he knew my name. "I believe we need to talk." What happened next left me speechless. Charles turned to his nephew, and without saying a word, he simply raised his hand. It was a subtle gesture, barely noticeable to the other guests, but its effect on Marcus was immediate and profound. The younger man's face went pale, and he took an involuntary step backward, his earlier bravado completely evaporated. "Marcus," Charles said quietly, his voice carrying the weight of authority earned through decades of leadership, "I think you owe someone an apology." The transformation was remarkable. Marcus, who moments before had been sneering at me with contempt, now looked like a chastened schoolboy. His hands trembled slightly as he turned to face me. I'm sorry, Robert. That was completely inappropriate. I spoke out of turn." But Charles wasn't finished. Still looking directly at his nephew, he continued, "Robert Morrison is a man who built a successful business from nothing. He raised an exceptional daughter who graduated summa cum laude from law school. He's respected in his community and loved by his family. If anyone should be ashamed tonight, it's you, Marcus, for failing to recognize the character of the man whose daughter you're marrying." The silence that followed was deafening. I could see guests in our vicinity straining to listen, though they pretended to be engaged in their own conversations. Marcus stood frozen, his face cycling through shades of red and white. Then Charles did something that surprised everyone, including me. He placed his hand on my shoulder and guided me toward the bar. "Robert, I'd like to buy you a drink and hear more about your business. I'm always interested in meeting genuine entrepreneurs." As we walked away, leaving Marcus standing alone among the scattered glass, I realized that sometimes the most powerful gesture isn't a grand speech or dramatic confrontation. Sometimes it's simply one person recognizing the worth in another and refusing to let that worth be diminished. That night taught me that respect isn't about money or social status. It's about character, dignity, and the courage to stand up for what's right. And sometimes, justice comes from the most unexpected places, delivered by the most unlikely allies. Emma never knew exactly what happened during those few minutes, but she did notice that Marcus treated me with considerably more respect for the rest of the evening. As for Charles Montgomery, he became not just a business contact, but a friend who taught me that true power lies in lifting others up, not tearing them down.